The new dawn moved slowly through the dark space between the stars. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the stars pass by. His ship carried 2,000 people who wanted to start new lives on a planet called Haven's Rest. Most of them were families with children. They had sold everything they owned to buy passage on his ship. Dr. Lisa Carter walked through the passenger areas checking on everyone. She saw kids playing games while their parents talked about the new world they would call home. An old man named Pete was teaching some teenagers how to play cards. A woman named Amy was singing lullabies to her baby. Everyone seemed happy and excited about their future. Jake had been flying ships for 20 years. He loved seeing the hope in people's eyes when they traveled to new worlds. The New Dawn was not a military ship. It was built to carry families safely across the galaxy. The ship had basic shields and a few small weapons, but nothing serious. Jake never expected to need them. The journey to Haven's Rest normally took 3 weeks. They were now in their second week and everything was going well. The ship's systems worked perfectly. The food was good. The passengers were getting along with each other. Jake thought this would be one of his easiest trips ever. That morning changed everything. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rodriguez was in charge of ship security. He had 12 guards to protect 2,000 passengers. Alex was drinking coffee in the security office when alarms started going off. His computer screen showed red warnings everywhere. Captain Morrison to the bridge immediately, came the announcement over the ship's speakers. Jake ran to the bridge where his crew was staring at their screens with worried faces. "What's happening?" he asked. His navigation officer pointed at the main screen. "Sir, we have company. Lots of company." Jake looked at the screen and felt his heart sink. 12 large warships surrounded the New Dawn. They were black and covered with sharp edges. Red lights blinked along their sides like angry eyes. Jake recognized the design immediately. These were Kethmer ships. The Kethmer were the most feared pirates in the galaxy. They attacked merchant ships and took hostages. They demanded money or information from governments. If they didn't get what they wanted, they killed everyone. No one had ever successfully fought them off. Most species just paid whatever the Kethmer asked for. "Open a communication channel," Jake ordered. Maybe he could talk to them. Maybe they would let the passengers go if he cooperated. The main screen flickered and showed the inside of a Kethmer ship. A huge alien sat in a chair that looked like a throne. His skin was gray and covered with scars. His teeth were sharp and yellow. 4 arms extended from his body, each ending in claws. This was Vextok, the most dangerous Kethmer leader in known space. "Human ship," Vextok said in a voice like grinding metal. "You will surrender immediately. Any resistance will result in the death of all aboard." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Morrison. We're a civilian transport with families and children. We have no military value. Please let us pass." Vextok laughed, a horrible sound that made everyone on the bridge step back. "You have exactly what we need, human. Your people will be very useful to us." The transmission ended. Within minutes, the Kethmer ships moved closer to the New Dawn. Jake ordered his crew to raise shields, but everyone knew it wouldn't help much. The New Dawn's weapons were no match for 12 warships. Dr. Carter was in the medical bay when she heard explosions. The ship shook violently. She grabbed the wall to keep from falling. Her computer showed that the Kethmer had blown holes in the New Dawn's hull. Emergency systems sealed the breaches, but the message was clear. The aliens could destroy the ship anytime they wanted. Alex Rodriguez ran through the corridors trying to organize his security team. But before they could do anything, Kethmer soldiers appeared throughout the ship. They moved through the walls using some kind of teleportation technology. Within 10 minutes, alien soldiers controlled every deck of the New Dawn, the Kethmer. Soldiers were smaller than their leader, but just as frightening. They wore black armor and carried energy weapons. They herded the passengers into the large cargo bays. Families were separated. Children cried for their parents. Old people struggled to keep up. Anyone who moved too slowly was hit with electric sticks. Jake and his crew were brought to the main cargo bay, where most of the passengers waited. The room was crowded and hot. People sat on the metal floor holding their children close. Everyone was scared but trying to stay calm. Vextalk's voice came through the ship's speakers. Humans of the New Dawn, you are now prisoners of the Kethmer Syndicate. Your fate depends on your government's cooperation with our demands. The alien leader explained what he wanted. The Kethmar needed the locations of 3 new human military bases. They wanted detailed information about human defense systems. Most importantly, they wanted the release of their war chief Grickenel from a human prison. Your leaders have 72 hours to meet our demands, Vextalk continued. If they refuse, we will begin executing passengers. We will start with 10 people to show we are serious. Then we will kill more every day until your government surrenders. Dr. Carter felt sick. She had treated victims of Kethmer attacks before. The aliens always kept their promises about killing hostages. They believed that other species would always choose to save lives rather than fight back. Jake looked around. The cargo bay had all the frightened faces. These people had trusted him to get them safely to their new home. Now they were prisoners because of decisions made by people they had never met. He felt responsible for every one of them. Alex tried to count how many security guards were still alive. He saw only 6 of his 12-man team. The others had probably been killed during the boarding. 6 guards against hundreds of Kethmer soldiers. The odds were impossible. Hours passed slowly in the cargo bay. The Kethmer gave them water, but no food. Parents tried to comfort their children. Dr. Carter moved through the crowd, checking on people who seemed sick or injured. She had her medical bag but limited supplies. Late that night, Vextalk returned to the cargo bay with several guards. He pointed at 10 passengers sitting near the front. You, he said, selecting them randomly. Among them were Pete, the old man who had been teaching card games, and Amy with her baby. These 10 will die now to show your government that we are serious, Vextalk announced. Their deaths will be broadcast to all human worlds. The selected passengers were taken to another part of the ship. Everyone remaining in the cargo bay could hear Amy's baby crying as they were led away. Then came the sound of energy weapons firing. The crying stopped. Dr. Carter closed her eyes and tried not to think about what had just happened. She had delivered Amy's baby 6 months ago at a station medical center. The little girl had been perfectly healthy and happy. Now she was dead because some government officials had information the Kethmer wanted. Jake felt anger building inside him. These aliens thought they could murder innocent people to get what they wanted. They had done this to dozens of other species over the years. Most governments eventually gave in to their demands rather than watch their citizens die. But Jake remembered something about human history. Humans had faced terrorists before on their home world. Sometimes they had negotiated. Sometimes they had fought back. He wondered what choice his government would make this time. The night passed slowly in the cargo bay. No one could sleep. Everyone was thinking about the 10 people who had died. Everyone was wondering if they would be next. The Kethmer guards stood at the exits, watching their prisoners with cold eyes. By morning, news of the New Dawn attack had reached Earth and every human colony. The demands had been broadcast across human space, along with images of the executed passengers. Now everyone waited to see how humanity would respond to the Kethmer threat. The galaxy was watching too. Most species expected the humans to negotiate like everyone else did. After all, what government would let innocent civilians die for the sake of military secrets? The Kethmer had used this strategy successfully for decades, but they were about to learn something important about humans that would change everything. The news reached Earth 12 hours after the attack on the New Dawn. Admiral Kate Sullivan was eating breakfast when her emergency communicator started beeping. She looked at the message and dropped her coffee cup. 2,000 civilians were being held hostage by the Kefmer Syndicate. Kate had been fighting in space for 30 years. She had seen wars between planets and battles between fleets, but she had never seen anything like the images being broadcast from the New Dawn. The Kefmer had recorded the execution of 10 innocent people, including a baby, and sent the recording to every human world. Within an hour, Kate was in the emergency command center on Earth. President Daniel Brooks arrived soon after with his top advisors. They sat around a large table watching the Kefmer demands being repeated on screens throughout the room. "They want the locations of our 3 newest military bases," said Colonel Maria Santos, the intelligence chief. "They also want our defense codes and the release of their war chief from prison." President Brooks was a calm man who rarely showed anger, but today his face was hard as stone. "How long do we have?" he asked. 72 hours, Admiral Sullivan replied. "Then they start killing more hostages." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what most governments did in situations like this. They negotiated. They made deals. They traded information or prisoners to save civilian lives. The Kefmer had used this strategy successfully against dozens of other species. But President Brooks surprised everyone with his next words. "Prepare a message for broadcast to all human worlds and colonies," he said. "We will not negotiate with terrorists. We will not surrender to blackmail. Every human life is precious, but we will not buy temporary safety with the deaths of countless others." Colonel Santos looked shocked. "Sir, they will kill the hostages." "They've already killed 10 people, the president replied. "If we give them what they want, they'll use it to kill thousands more in future attacks." The Kefmer have been terrorizing the galaxy for decades because everyone gives in to their demands. That stops today. Admiral Sullivan understood immediately. "You want to end this permanently. I want to make sure no other civilian transport ever faces what the New Dawn is facing right now," President Brooks said. "Prepare our fleets for Operation Retribution." Within hours, the president's message was broadcast across human space. The reaction was not what other species expected. Instead of panic or protests demanding negotiation, there was something else. Anger. Cold, determined anger. Captain Ben Walsh was commanding the battleship Thunder's Edge when he received his orders. His ship was the most powerful warship in the human fleet. It carried enough weapons to destroy entire space stations. Ben had been hoping for a quiet patrol mission. Instead, he was ordered to lead a task force to rescue the New Dawn. But rescue was only part of the mission. Ben's orders also included finding and destroying every Kefmer base, ship, and outpost they could locate. This was not just a rescue operation. It was a war. Chief Engineer Ryan Foster worked day and night preparing the Thunder's Edge for battle. He upgraded the weapon systems and improved the ship's armor. Other ships in the fleet were doing the same thing. If they were going to fight the Kefmer, they would be ready. Communications Officer Larva Phillips intercepted Kefmer transmissions to learn more about their plans. The aliens seemed confident that humans would eventually surrender like other species had done. They were broadcasting more images of the hostages to pressure human leaders into negotiating. But something unexpected was happening throughout human space. Civilian ships were volunteering to help the military effort. Retired soldiers were returning to active duty. Mining companies offered their ships as support vessels. Even merchant captains who normally avoided any kind of violence were requesting permission to join the rescue fleet. The message spreading through human colonies was simple. An attack on any human was an attack on all humans. The Kefmer had made the mistake of thinking humans were like other species. They were about to learn how wrong they were. On the colony world of New Texas, A group of retired Marines heard about the new dawn. They immediately boarded a transport ship and headed toward the battle zone. "Those are our people," said their leader, a tough woman named Nancy Price. "We don't leave our people behind." Similar scenes were happening on dozens of human worlds. The government had not asked for volunteers, but they came anyway. Some were military veterans. Others were civilian pilots who wanted to help. All of them shared the same determination to rescue the hostages and punish the terrorists. The Kethmer monitored human communications and became increasingly confused. Where were the desperate pleas for negotiation? Where were the protests demanding that the government save the hostages at any cost? Instead, they intercepted messages like, "Give them hell and make the aliens pay." Vextok contacted other Kethmer leaders to discuss the situation. "The humans are not responding as expected," he reported. "Their government refuses to negotiate." "Then kill more hostages," replied War Chief Noktar from the main Kethmer base. "Increase the pressure. All species break eventually." But the Kethmer were making a fundamental mistake. They assumed humans thought like other species in the galaxy. Most civilizations valued peace above all else. They would rather make deals with criminals than fight wars. They saw terrorism as an unfortunate cost of doing business in space. Humans had a different perspective. They had fought wars against terrorism on their home planet for centuries. They had learned that giving in to terrorist demands only encouraged more terrorism. Sometimes the only way to protect innocent people was to ensure that terrorism never succeeded as a strategy. Admiral Sullivan coordinated the largest military operation in human history. 27 warships were heading toward the New Dawn's location, but that was just the beginning. Intelligence teams were tracking down every known Kethmer base in the galaxy. Support fleets were moving to cut off alien escape routes. Colonel Santos worked with intelligence officers from every human colony. They shared information about Kethmer activities, ship movements, and base locations. The aliens had been operating in the open for years because no one had ever seriously tried to stop them. That gave human intelligence detailed information about their entire organization. "We know where they live," Maria told Admiral Sullivan. "We know where they keep their supplies, where they repair their ships, where their leaders hide. They've been so successful for so long that they stopped being careful." The galaxy watched with growing interest as human fleets moved through space. Most alien governments expected the humans to eventually negotiate. The Valn Commonwealth issued official statements supporting peaceful resolution. The Zarian Republic offered to mediate between humans and the Kethmer, but human ambassadors gave the same response everywhere. "We do not negotiate with terrorists. We eliminate them." Ambassador Helen Clark addressed the Galactic Council with a simple message. "The Kethmer Syndicate has declared war on human civilians. We accept their declaration. There will be no negotiations, no compromises, and no mercy for those who choose terrorism as their weapon." Other species began to realize that humans were serious. This was not a rescue mission that would end with a prisoner exchange or ransom payment. This was the beginning of a war that would only end when the Kethmer Syndicate no longer existed. Back on the New Dawn, Captain Morrison noticed changes in the Kethmer guards. They seemed nervous and kept checking their communications. Equipment. Dr. Carter overheard them talking about human fleet movements. The aliens were beginning to understand that their hostage situation was not going according to plan. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez quietly organized the surviving crew members. If the human fleet was coming to rescue them, they needed to be ready to help. The guards were watching the passengers carefully, but they were not paying as much attention to the ship's crew. Jake used his knowledge of the ship's systems to send coded messages to other crew members. The New Dawn's computers were still partially under his control. If he could coordinate with the rescue fleet, they might be able to help from the inside when the attack began. The 72-hour deadline was approaching, but instead of desperate negotiations, the Kethmer were detecting more human ships arriving in the system every hour. Their hostage strategy was not working. For the first time in decades, they faced an enemy that refused to bargain with them. Vextok prepared to execute more hostages to increase pressure on human leaders. He still believed that eventually all species would choose to save lives rather than fight. But he was about to discover that humans had a very different definition of protecting innocent people. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change how the entire galaxy viewed humanity and terrorism forever. The 72-hour deadline arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Vextok sat in his command chair, expecting desperate messages from Earth. He had done this dozens of times before with other species. By now, government officials should be begging to negotiate. They should be offering money, prisoners, or information to save their people. Instead, his communication officer brought him a single message from Admiral Kate Sullivan. The transmission was short and cold. You have committed acts of terrorism against human civilians. There will be no negotiation, no compromise, and no mercy. We are coming for you. The message ended immediately. No pleading, no offers to trade, no desperate attempts to bargain for more time. Vextok stared at the blank screen in confusion. In 30 years of taking hostages, no government had ever responded like this. Send another message to Earth, he ordered his communication officer. Tell them we will execute 50 more hostages if they do not respond within 6 hours. But even as he gave the order, Vextok felt something he had not experienced in decades: doubt. His sensors were detecting more human ships arriving in the system every hour. This was supposed to be a simple hostage situation, but it was turning into something much larger. On the new dawn, the Kethmer guards seemed more nervous than before. They kept checking their weapons and looking at their communication devices. Dr. Lisa Carter noticed they were talking among themselves in worried voices. Something was making them afraid. Captain Jake Morrison used the ship's internal systems to monitor what was happening outside. His screens showed dozens of human ships arriving at the edge of the solar system. But these were not just military vessels. He saw mining ships, cargo haulers, and even passenger transports. It looked like half of human space was coming to help. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rodriguez quietly passed messages to the remaining crew members. Get ready, he whispered to the ship's cook, Bob Turner. When this starts, we need to be prepared to help our people. The cook nodded and began organizing other crew members. They had been working on the New Dawn for years and knew every corridor and maintenance tunnel. If human forces boarded the ship, the crew could guide them to where the hostages were being held. Vextok decided to carry out his threat. He selected 50 passengers from the main cargo bay, including several children and elderly people. Among them was a teacher named Carol, who had been reading stories to the kids, and an old farmer named Frank, who had been sharing his food with hungry families. These 50 will die to show your government that we are serious, Vextok announced to the remaining hostages. Their deaths will be broadcast to all human worlds. Dr. Carter watched in horror as the selected passengers were led away. She tried to follow them, claiming she needed to provide medical care, but the guards pushed her back. Everyone in the cargo bay could hear people crying and pleading as they were taken to another part of the ship. Then came the sound of energy weapons firing. 50 more innocent people were dead. The executions were broadcast across human space. Within minutes, the images showed families being killed while holding each other. Children died calling for their parents. Old people died trying to protect the young ones. The Kethmer made sure every human world saw what happened to those who refused to negotiate, but the reaction was not what Vextok expected. Instead of desperate pleas for negotiation, human colonies erupted with fury. Military recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. Civilian ship owners offered their vessels to the military. even peaceful settlements that had never seen. Combat began organizing support for the rescue operation. On the agricultural world of Green Valley, a group of farmers watched the execution broadcast in silence. Then their leader, a quiet man named Paul, stood up and made an announcement. "Load every cargo ship we have with food and supplies. Our fleet is going to need them." Similar scenes happened across human space. The Kethmer had expected their brutality to break human resolve. Instead, it united every human world in a way that had never happened before. The message was clear. The aliens had made their last mistake. Captain Ben Walsh received reports of civilian volunteers from across the galaxy. His Thunder's Edge was now leading a fleet of over 200 ships. Some were powerful warships, others were converted civilian vessels armed with whatever weapons their crews could find. All of them had the same goal: rescue the hostages and destroy the Kethmer forever. Chief Engineer Ryan Foster worked with volunteers from mining ships to upgrade their weapons. "We're not just fighting for the new dawn," he told a group of civilian engineers. "We're fighting to make sure this never happens to anyone else." Communications Officer Lavra Phillips intercepted increasingly desperate Kethmer transmissions. The aliens were calling for reinforcements from their bases throughout the galaxy. But they were also receiving disturbing reports. Human fleets were appearing near Kethmer installations everywhere. This was not just a rescue mission. It was a coordinated attack on their entire organization. Vextok contacted other Kethmer leaders for advice. "The humans are not responding normally," he reported. "They refuse to negotiate even after we killed 60 of their people." War Chief Noctar was confused by the reports he was receiving. "Our base on Krixtal is under attack by human ships," he said. "How did they find us so quickly?" "The supply depot at Vorthkar has gone silent," reported another leader. "We lost contact 3 hours ago." For the first time in their history, the Kethmer were facing an enemy that fought back. Every species they had terrorized before had eventually negotiated. Even the proud Valm had paid ransoms to save their civilians. But humans seemed to have a completely different approach to dealing with terrorism. Colonel Maria Santos coordinated attacks on 17 different Kethmer bases simultaneously. Her intelligence teams had spent decades tracking alien movements. Now all that information was being used to systematically destroy the terrorist organization. "Hit them everywhere at once," she ordered her field commanders. "Don't give them time to reorganize or escape. Every base, every supply depot, every safe house they have. We end this today." The attacks began at exactly the same time across multiple star systems. Human forces struck Kethmer installations with overwhelming firepower. The aliens had grown comfortable over the years, believing no one would seriously challenge them. Their bases were poorly defended against determined military assault. On the mining world of Rocky Point, a Kethmer supply depot exploded as human marines planted charges throughout the facility. The aliens had stored weapons and equipment there for years, thinking it was safely hidden. But human intelligence had been watching them the entire time. A secret Kethmer communication center on the moon of Titans. Hope went silent as human. Special forces eliminated everyone inside. The facility had been used to coordinate hostage operations across the galaxy. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and smoke. Back on the New Dawn, the Kethmer guards were receiving reports of disaster after disaster. Their confident attitude was cracking. Some of them looked genuinely afraid for the first time since boarding the human ship. Dr. Carter overheard 2 guards arguing about whether they should try to escape. "The humans are destroying everything," one of them said in their clicking language. "Maybe we should kill all the hostages and run." "Vextok will execute us if we abandon the mission," replied the other guard. "We have to trust that reinforcements will arrive." But no reinforcements were coming. Every Kethmer ship that tried to reach the New Dawn was intercepted by human patrols. The alien terrorist network that had terrorized the galaxy for decades was being systematically destroyed in a single day. Captain Morrison managed to access the ship's external sensors without the guards noticing. What he saw made him smile for the first time since the attack began. Hundreds of human ships filled the space around the New Dawn. Some were massive, battleships like the Thunder's Edge. Others were small fighters that had volunteered from civilian colonies. All of them carried the same message: humanity had come to collect its people. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez prepared his remaining security team for what was coming. When they board, he told his people, "We hit the guards from behind. We know this ship better than they do. Use that advantage." The ship's cook, Bob Turner, had organized the civilian crew members. Kitchen workers, maintenance staff, and cargo handlers all volunteered to help when the rescue began. They might not be trained soldiers, but they knew every hiding place and secret passage on the New Dawn. Dr. Carter continued treating injured hostages while secretly mapping the locations of all the guards. She used her medical scanner to identify where the aliens were positioned throughout the ship. When human forces arrived, they would need that information to avoid hitting civilians. As night fell on the New Dawn, Vexdoc made one final attempt to contact Earth. He offered to release half the hostages in exchange for just one piece of information about human military bases. It was a desperate bargain from an alien who was beginning to understand that his usual tactics were not working. The response from Admiral Sullivan was even shorter than before: no. That single word told Vexdoc everything he needed to know. The humans were not going to negotiate. They were not going to bargain. The attack began at dawn. Captain Ben Walsh gave the signal from the bridge of the Thunder's Edge, and 200 human ships moved toward the New Dawn at the same time. The Kefmer vessels that had surrounded the civilian transport for days suddenly found themselves surrounded by an enemy they had never expected to fight. The alien warships tried to form a defensive line, but they were designed for attacking helpless merchant ships, not fighting real military vessels. The Thunder's Edge alone carried more firepower than half the Kefmer fleet combined. When Chief Engineer Ryan Foster fired the main weapons, 3 alien ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. "All ships, engage the enemy," Captain Walsh ordered over the communication system. "Remember, our people are on that transport. Make every shot count." The space battle was short and brutal. Human ships attacked from multiple directions while the Kefmer fleet struggled to respond. Communications Officer Lavra Phillips intercepted alien transmissions filled with panic and confusion. The terrorists had never faced an enemy that fought back with such overwhelming force. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Barnes led the boarding teams preparing to assault the New Dawn. His Marines were the best fighters in the human military. They had trained for hostage rescue operations their entire careers. Each team knew exactly what to do when they reached the civilian ship. "Remember the mission," Tony told his soldiers as they loaded into assault shuttles. "Save our people and eliminate every terrorist on that ship." These aliens chose to murder human civilians. They made their choice. Now we make ours. The first assault shuttle launched from the Thunder's Edge and raced toward the New Dawn. Behind it came dozens more shuttles carrying Marines, medical teams, and technical specialists. They had studied the ship's design for hours and knew where the hostages were being held. On the New Dawn, Vexdoc watched his fleet being destroyed through the main view screen. Half his ships were already gone, and the others were running away as fast as they could. The human attack was nothing like what he had expected. These were not desperate civilians trying to bargain for lives. These were professional soldiers who wanted revenge. "Prepare to repel boarders," he ordered his remaining guards. "Kill as many hostages as possible before the humans reach them. If we cannot escape, we will make them pay for attacking us." But Captain Jake Morrison had been waiting for this moment. As soon as the space battle began, he activated hidden programs in the ship's computer system. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the new dawn, trapping groups of Kethmer guards in separate sections of the ship. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rodriguez led the uprising he had been planning for days. The ship's crew attacked Kethmer guards who were cut off from their reinforcements. Cook Bob Turner used a kitchen knife to stab an alien who was trying to kill a hostage. Maintenance worker Dave grabbed a plasma torch and burned through the armor of another guard. Dr. Lisa Carter activated her medical scanner and began broadcasting the locations of remaining guards to the approaching human forces. Third deck. Section 7, she said into her communicator. 4 guards holding 30 hostages. The first human assault shuttle reached the new dawn and attached to the main airlock. Tony Barnes and his Marines cut through the door in seconds and poured into the ship's corridors. They moved with deadly precision, using Dr. Carter's information to find and eliminate the guards. The Kethmer had spread throughout the ship to maximize the damage they could do to hostages. But this also meant they were isolated and outnumbered when the Marines found them. Most of the guards died before they could fire a single shot. Marine Sergeant Nicole Adams kicked down a door and found 5 guards, threatening a group of children. She shot 3 aliens before they could react. The other 2 tried to use the children as shields, but her teammate threw a stun grenade that knocked out everyone in the room. The Marines quickly separated the unconscious guards from the children and eliminated the terrorists. In the main cargo bay, Vextok made his final stand with 20 of his most loyal guards. They had herded over 1,000 hostages into the center of the room and surrounded them with weapons pointed inward. The alien leader knew he was going to die, but he planned to take as many humans with him as possible. "Come any closer and we kill them all," he shouted when human Marines appeared at the doorways. "Your rescue mission ends here." But Captain Morrison had one more surprise for the alien terrorist. He had been secretly accessing the ship's life support systems for hours. At exactly the right moment, he shut off the artificial gravity in the cargo bay. Everything in the room began floating in zero gravity. The hostages pushed themselves toward the walls while the confused Kethmer guards struggled to aim their weapons. In the chaos, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez and his security team attacked from behind. The battle in the cargo bay lasted only minutes. The Kethmer guards were trained to fight in normal gravity, not in the weightless environment that human spacers dealt with every day. Marine reinforcements arrived and finished off the remaining terrorists. Vextok found himself surrounded by angry humans with no way to escape. He tried to grab a child to use as a shield, but Dr. Carter hit him with a sedative injection she had prepared. The alien leader collapsed, and the hostage crisis was finally over. Tony Barnes coordinated the rescue of survivors throughout the ship. Medical teams rushed to treat injured hostages while his Marines searched for any remaining guards. The ship's crew helped guide rescue workers to hidden compartments, where some civilians had been hiding. Dr. Carter worked frantically to save the people who had been injured during the crisis. Many hostages were dehydrated and malnourished after days in the cargo bays. Others had been beaten by guards or wounded in the fighting. She had lost 60 good people to terrorist violence, but she was determined to save everyone else. Captain Walsh received reports from his boarding teams as they secured different sections of the New Dawn. Most of the Kethmer guards were dead. A few had been captured alive for questioning. The important thing was that over 1,800 hostages had been rescued successfully, but the rescue of the New Dawn was only part of Operation Retribution. While Tony Barnes and his Marines were fighting aboard the civilian ship, Admiral Kate Sullivan was coordinating attacks throughout the galaxy. Every known Kethmer base was under assault by human forces. Colonel Maria Santos reported the results to Admiral Sullivan as they came. In Crystal Base destroyed. Vorthkar Supply Depot eliminated. Communication Center on Titan's Hope is offline. We've hit 17 targets simultaneously, and all missions were successful. The Kethmer Syndicate was being systematically destroyed in a single day. Bases that had operated safely for decades were burning. Supply depots were exploding. Command centers were silent. The terrorist organization that had terrorized the galaxy was being wiped out of existence. On the prison world of Blackwater Station, guards received orders regarding the captured Kethmar warchief, Gricano. The alien had been demanding release as part of the New Dawn negotiations. Instead, he was informed that he would be tried for war crimes against human civilians. There would be no prisoner exchange, no bargaining, and no mercy. Captain Morrison walked through his ship as rescue teams evacuated the surviving passengers. The New Dawn was damaged but could still fly. More importantly, most of his people were alive. The terrorists had tried to break human resolve by murdering innocent civilians, but they had only made humanity more determined to destroy them. Jake found Dr. Carter in the medical bay, treating a wounded child. The little boy had been shot by a guard during the rescue, but he was going to survive. How many did we lose? Jake asked quietly. 60 confirmed dead, Lisa replied without looking up from her patient. But 1,840 are alive. Because your crew fought back and our military came for us. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez joined them, his uniform torn and stained with alien blood. The ship is secure, Captain. All remaining guards are either dead or in custody. We're ready to get these people to safety. As the New Dawn prepared to leave for the nearest human starbase, Captain Walsh's fleet continued hunting down fleeing Kethmer ships. The aliens who had seemed so confident just days before were now running for their lives. But there was nowhere in the galaxy they could hide from human justice. The rescue operation had succeeded beyond all expectations. But more importantly, humanity had sent a message that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. They did not negotiate with terrorists. They did not bargain with murderers. They eliminated threats to innocent people with overwhelming force and absolute determination. The Kethmer Syndicate had made their last mistake when they decided to take human civilians hostage. Now they were learning what happened to anyone who chose terrorism as their weapon against humanity. 6 months after the New Dawn incident, the Kethmer Syndicate no longer existed. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in her office looking at reports from across the galaxy. Every alien base had been destroyed. Every supply depot was gone. Every command center lay in ruins. The terrorist organization that had terrorized civilized space for decades was nothing but a memory. Captain Jake Morrison received command of a new ship called the Second Chance. His first mission was to transport the New Dawn survivors who had finally reached Haven's Rest to start their new lives. The colony welcomed them as heroes who had survived something no one should ever face. Dr. Lisa Carter opened a memorial hospital on Haven's Rest, dedicated to the 60 people who died during the hostage crisis. She hung their pictures in the main lobby along with a simple message: they died because evil people chose terrorism. We live because good people chose to fight back. The surviving passengers of the New Dawn built their homes and started their families on the New World. But they never forgot what happened to them. They told their children about the day humanity declared war on terrorism. They explained why their people never negotiated with murderers and kidnappers. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rodriguez became the head of civilian ship security for the entire colonial fleet. His job was to make sure no transport vessel ever faced what the New Dawn had experienced. He trained crews to fight back against pirates and terrorists instead of just hoping for rescue. Cook Bob Turner opened a restaurant on Haven's Rest that became famous throughout the colony. People came not just for the food, but to hear his stories about fighting alien terrorists with kitchen knives and cooking equipment. He always ended his tales the same way: we didn't wait for someone else to save us. We saved ourselves. Captain Ben Walsh was promoted to admiral and given command of the new rapid response fleet. His ships patrolled human space looking for any signs of terrorist activity. The message was clear: attack human civilians, and face immediate destruction. By overwhelming military force, the galaxy watched these developments with growing interest and concern. Other species had always handled terrorism through negotiation and compromise. They paid ransoms, traded prisoners, and made deals to protect their civilians. But humans had chosen a completely different path. Ambassador Helen Clark addressed the Galactic Council 1 year after the New Dawn incident. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all waiting to hear what humanity had learned from their experience with the Kethmer. "Many of you have asked why we chose war instead of negotiation," Helen said from the speaking platform. "You want to know why we risked innocent lives instead of simply giving the terrorists what they demanded." The chamber was completely silent. Everyone knew that human military doctrine had changed galactic politics forever. Some species admired humanity's determination. Others feared what humans might do to anyone who threatened their people. "The answer is simple," Helen continued. "We learned long ago that giving in to terrorism only encourages more terrorism. When you pay ransoms, kidnappers take more hostages. When you trade prisoners, more criminals commit crimes knowing they might be rescued. When you negotiate with murderers, you teach them that murder is an effective tool." She gestured to a large screen that showed images of the destroyed Kethmer bases. For 30 years, the Kethmer terrorized dozens of species because everyone chose temporary peace over permanent safety. Every government that negotiated with them made the next attack more likely. A representative from the Velm Commonwealth stood up to speak. "But you sacrificed the lives of your own people to make a political point. How do you justify letting civilians die when you could have saved them?" Helen's expression grew cold. 60 humans died on the New Dawn because we chose to fight instead of surrender. But how many thousands of people from other species died over the decades because everyone else chose to surrender instead of fight? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Everyone in the chamber knew she was right. The Kethmer had killed countless civilians during 30 years of successful terrorist operations. No one had ever seriously tried to stop them until humans refused to negotiate. "We call it the human doctrine," Helen explained. "We will protect the innocent, punish the guilty, and never negotiate with those who choose terrorism as their method. This is not a threat or a boast. It is simply who we are." The speech was broadcast throughout human space and became required viewing in schools and military academies. Children learned why their ancestors had chosen to fight terrorism instead of appeasing it. Soldiers understood that their job was not just to defend human worlds, but to ensure that terrorism never succeeded as a strategy against any innocent people. Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan established new protocols for dealing with hostage situations. Any group that took human civilians prisoner would face immediate military response. There would be no negotiations, no compromise, and no mercy for those who chose terrorism as their weapon. Other species negotiate because they see terrorism as a cost of doing business, Kate explained to her senior officers. "We see it as a declaration of war." That difference in perspective has kept our civilians safe ever since. The protocols were tested several times over the following years. Small groups of criminals tried to copy the Kethmer strategy, thinking they could force concessions from human authorities by threatening innocent lives. Each time, they received the same response: overwhelming military force and complete destruction. A group of space pirates captured a human mining station and demanded ransom from the colonial government. Within 6 hours, a human battle fleet arrived and eliminated every pirate ship. The miners were rescued, and the pirates learned too late that humans meant what they said about not negotiating: alien criminals, who had operated successfully against other species for years, suddenly found human space completely closed to them. Word spread through the criminal underworld: never target humans. They don't pay ransoms, they don't make deals, and they don't stop hunting you until you're dead. The policy had unexpected benefits beyond security. Human merchant ships became the safest in the galaxy, because everyone knew that attacking them would bring swift and terrible revenge. Human colonies grew rapidly because families knew they would be protected from terrorist threats. Other species began quietly updating their intelligence files on humanity. The standard entry became, humans do not negotiate with terrorists. They eliminate them. All contact with human civilian populations should be conducted through proper diplomatic channels to avoid triggering their total war protocols. Captain Ben Walsh, now Admiral Walsh, used the New Dawn incident as a case study when training new officers. "The Kethmer thought they understood us," he would tell his students. "They believed we were like other species who value peace above justice. They learned too late that humans have a different definition of protecting innocent people." His favorite lesson involved showing recordings of the final Kethmer transmissions before their bases were destroyed. The aliens could be heard pleading for mercy and offering to release all their hostages in exchange for safe passage. The human response was always the same: no. Dr. Carter returned to her medical practice but also became a leading expert on treating hostage trauma. She helped other survivors of terrorist attacks understand that their rescue was not just about saving their individual lives, but about preventing future attacks on other innocent people. 60 good people died so that thousands of others would never face what we faced, she would tell her patients. Their sacrifice meant that terrorism would never again be seen as an effective strategy against humanity. The Memorial Hospital on Haven's Rest became a pilgrimage site for humans throughout the galaxy. Families would travel there to remember the people who died and to understand why their government had chosen war over negotiation. The museum displayed artifacts from the New Dawn and recordings of the final battle against the Kethmer. Years passed, and the galaxy grew quieter. Terrorist attacks against civilian targets became rare because everyone understood that some species would respond with total destruction. The lesson of the New Dawn spread to every corner of civilized space. Humans don't bargain with terrorists. Children growing up on human colonies learned the story in school. They understood that freedom and safety required courage and sacrifice. They knew that sometimes protecting innocent people meant refusing to compromise with evil, even when that refusal came at a terrible cost. The New Dawn incident became the moment when the galaxy learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their absolute unwillingness to reward evil with success. They had chosen justice over temporary peace, and that choice made the universe a safer place for everyone. The warning was clear and universal: attack human civilians, and face the full wrath of a species that never forgives, never forgets, and never negotiates with those who choose terrorism as their weapon.